resources staff will also be available to answer any questions that you may have. Travis is TravisKauffman. Travis, good to have you.
Hey everybody. Just a show of hands. Who all is disappointed that I'm not in fact Chuck Norris? Yeah, I know. That's a pretty big letdown for everybody who thought I was a big geeky guy. So I guess I'd just like to start off by thanking some of the people that helped me on the way down. So let's see, we had Spencer, who was the first runner that I ran into. Very helpful guy, ran down, jogged with me, got to talk with him, kept me calm. And then Noah and Rachel. So yeah, Rachel was the lady that drove me to the hospital, kind of kept me calm, we talked during the car ride there. And then Noah, who was just a champ, went and got my truck, drove to the hospital, dropped off my things so I could have my phone and contact my loved ones and let them know that a weird thing happened, but that I was okay. So I really appreciate their help. And then, of course, just my friends and family through all this. They've been really supportive and incredibly nice. So,
can you move the microphone a little closer to you?
No, sure.
That's better. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, thank yous aside, I guess I can take some questions now.
Can you tell us your experience from beginning to start? From the start to the end.
From the beginning to the end.
We'd like to hear it, not have to rely on the video that we just saw. We want to hear you. What was your experience?
Okay. So my experience as, I know you guys saw the video, but in person. So I decided to go for a run last Monday, February 4th. It was around noontime. I wanted to go on a pretty long scenic run. I headed up to Lori State Park, and I kind of had a predetermined route that I was going to go on, and I knew that I wanted to do towers because I just wanted to give myself a little challenge. So ran through the south side of Lori State Park, which is a couple miles, and then linked up with Towers Road, which is a really steep 4x4 road. It's about 9% grade on average, and it's a little under 3.5 miles to the top. So running up, successfully got through the run and felt pretty good. Up at the top, I was able to look around and really take in some of the views. So up there you can see Fort Collins and the Front Range to the east, and then to the west you can see the rest of the mountain ranges and the Rockies kind of descending into space. So iconic rock you'll see on the east side of town with the skyline. But I encountered some ice on the trail, about a half mile in, so I turned back and then decided to peel off on the now infamous West Ridge Trail and cruise on that east ahead and hook back up with Towers and then head down. But about a quarter mile into that run, I ended up hearing some pine needles rustle, like a stick break, and I turned around and just was pretty bummed out to see a mountain lion chasing after me. So I stopped and threw my hands up in the air and I started shouting, and unfortunately the shouts didn't deter it, so it just kind of kept running and lunged at me. It was going toward my face, so I threw up my hands to kind of block my face, at which point it grabbed onto my hand and wrist, and from there it started to claw at my face and neck, and that's when kind of my fear response turned into more of a fight response, because I realized how close it was getting to my eyes, and it got a claw on my lip, and I tried to throw it off me at that point, and then we took a little tumble down the south side of the trail, and down there just kind of had a little wrestling match, at which point I was able to get on top of it, pin its back legs, so I didn't get any soft tissue scratched out in my nether regions, and At that point, I was grabbing around for sticks. I only had my left hand free. My right hand was still locked in its jaws. Tried to get at its neck to see if I could stab it in the neck to get it to release. That wasn't working. The sticks were breaking. So then I picked up a rock that I had seen kind of near us. It was pretty heavy. It was kind of hard to wield, and I tried to give it a few bashes in the back of the head, but fortunately I just kind of had a tough time swinging it with my arm still locked into the cat's jaws. Really wasn't working too well at that point. I knew with two pretty good blows to the back of the head that it didn't release, that I was probably going to have to do something a little more drastic, and I was able to kind of shift my weight and get a foot on its neck. And at that point, I stepped on its neck with my right foot, and just slowly after a few minutes, I thought I would be getting close, and then it'd start thrashing again, and had a few more scratches that resulted from those thrashes at that point. And I'd say another couple minutes later, it finally stopped moving, and then jaws opened, and I was able to kind of scramble back up the hill and get the heck out of Dodge.
How long did it all take from start to finish?
It's hard to say. I mean, I guess in my mind, if I replayed it, it seems like a long time, but I would think maybe 10 minutes at most.
A lot of people who are attacked by other animals say that some of the most vivid memories they have are of what they heard and what they smelled. Can you talk about that?
I was actually kind of surprised about the silence of it. There really wasn't any growls that I was hearing. I didn't hear any sort of cat noises that I would normally associate with a wild cat. The smells, I don't really remember the smells. I remember looking down and seeing the claws, like retracting and then coming out of its paws, and was just really looking at those because that's whenever the front paws were just kind of thrashing when it was on top of it. So it was really pretty visually intense, and I don't really remember that many smells.
Did that cliche kind of saying of your life flashing in front of your eyes, did you have a moment like that, or was it just pure adrenaline?
It was just pure adrenaline. There was a certain point where I kind of just imagined being stuck on this hillside and eventually just having a cat gnaw at me, which is a creepy way to go. But for the most part, the adrenaline just kind of kept kicking back in those moments. One of my big fears throughout the whole thing was another cat coming along, because it was a younger cat and I could tell that it wasn't fully grown, and I was just very concerned that Mom was going to come out of nowhere, and at that point that fight would be over pretty quickly.
Did you
think you were not going to make it out of this? And after everything that you've been through, I got to know what you and Annie are doing for Valentine's Day.
There was a point where I was concerned that I wasn't going to make it out of it, and I think it might have been a mix of me tussling with the cat and it still clawing at me, and then thinking about another cat potentially coming along, and I just kind of had that wave of fear roll over me, and thought that I could just end up there and stay there. And luckily that wasn't the case, and I am able to spend Valentine's Day 2019 with my girlfriend Annie. And let's see, tonight, I don't know. What are you thinking? Mac and cheese?
Somehow haven't gotten around to plans.
Yeah, we'll see.
Can you describe the pain of an attack like that?
The pain wasn't as intense as I would think it would be. That could also be for the fact that I just had really high doses of adrenaline coursing through my body. The thing that hurt the most was my wrist, and that's just where the cat had kind of latched on. And at one point, I just remember feeling jolts in my nerves and my fingers, just because one of the cat's tooth was inside the kind of meat of my palm, and I just felt it kind of hitting that nerve over and over again. So these two fingers were just kind of a little bit electric. And then it was grinding at like after I hit it in the head with the rock, it started grinding his teeth back and forth, and I could hear kind of ligaments and tendons shifting around in there, and that it hurt. But I also remember the sound of that was pretty disturbing. I was like, well, there goes all loss of function in my fingers, but luckily it's not the case.
What's it been like getting all of this attention? Sorry. And has any of it been negative?
So far, everything has been really positive. I'm not a big internet guy, so I haven't really seen any of the negative stuff. It is weird getting all this attention. I don't know, it's kind of weird to feel kind of famous for like an unearned reason. It's very much like a situation of happenstance where like a wrong place, wrong time instead of an earned sort of degree of fame, I guess. So that's been pretty weird.
One of the local stations in Denver is calling you the king of the north since we didn't know who you were until now. Just wondering what you made for your reputation.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be the hardest part is I will never be able to live up to the reputation. And maybe that's what has led to some of my reticence for actually coming out, because I know the story is bigger than my puny form. So.
What do you think Chuck Norris would think?
Oh man, Chuck would have come out without a scratch. And he'd probably have the tiger slung over his shoulders too. Not a tiger, a
Is there
lion,
a
sorry.
chance we could hear from Annie? Can we hear from you about what this was like for you?
Yeah, I'm willing
Sure.
to answer
Call.
some questions.
But
Yeah.
how did you
Scoot
find
your
out?
chest.
Yeah, come over here.
The microphone. So
So what did you, go ahead.
what did you think when you heard this story?
I just kind of couldn't make sense of what was happening. There was this weird sensation that, like, are you messing with me? Like, is this some weird joke? Like, what is happening? And especially because I was in a meeting actually at work, a big meeting, and I had a presentation, and so I missed an unknown number when we first got to a phone and didn't really think anything of it. And then when I saw that I had a missed call from him after my presentation, I was a little bit concerned. It's a little bit unusual that he would call me at that time, and so I just texted and just checking, sorry, I can't answer right now, I'm in a meeting, is everything okay? And he started with, which I'm very glad, I'm okay, but I got attacked with I got by a mountain lion on my run, and I'm in the ER at PVH, and of course I jumped out of my chair and ran out of the meeting, and then we were able to talk for a couple of minutes, and then I think I must have asked him how he got away or something like that, and that's when he said that he killed it, and that's when I think it was like, what?
She totally didn't believe it.
I was like, so I think there was a level of just confusion, and then we didn't really talk on the phone for much after that. I was like, okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Ran back into the meeting, grabbed my stuff, and was at the hospital in probably about 10 minutes. One of the scariest parts of that day anyway was getting to the hospital, and they told me which room I was in, so I ran and I found the room, and you have all this buildup in your mind of what you're gonna turn around and see, and what's he gonna say, and all that kind of stuff, and I turned into the room all pumped up on adrenaline probably too, and it was empty. Nobody's in there. And I turned around, and it was this that he was wearing during the attack with blood on it, and his hat that of course I recognized filled with blood inside of it. And so then I ran back out, and that's when they were wheeling him down the hallway. So I just, ran to him, and I just remember saying, "Can I kiss him? Can I kiss him?"
That's key.
Yeah. And the nurse was like, "I don't care if I kiss him." Yeah.
So is that the jacket you were wearing?
This was it, yeah. So I was actually really glad that I had on 2 long sleeves and a pair of gloves. So this thing took quite a bit of, a pretty good amount of beating, so yeah.
Andy, what do you think though when the first time you see his injuries? What goes through your mind?
I guess there was a part where I was just thankful that he had his eyes and like his fingers and all his parts, and it didn't look as bad as I maybe would have thought that it could have, because I saw them after they did sort of initial cleanup too. When we were in the room together, there was definitely some times where I couldn't take my eyes off his cheek gash. That one was pretty intense to look at. But it was never like I felt like you couldn't look at him or anything like that. Just definitely just happy that he had all of his parts.
John, sorry, not outdoorsman, but had you ever given any serious thought to what you would do in a situation like this before it actually happened? Or did it just seem remote to you?
I mean, a little bit. Just the kind of generalities behind it. So pretty much black bears and mountain lions you fight. Grizzly bears you don't. So stuff like that.
Did you instantly know what kind of animal you were dealing with?
Yeah. I kind of second guessed myself when I was talking to Jason, who was the first officer that I spoke to after the event. I was like, well, I think I'm pretty sure it was a mountain lion. And then he's like, well, I think it might have been a bobcat. I was like, oh, it could have been a bobcat. Didn't really look at the tail too much. I was looking at teeth a lot. So, but yeah, I pretty quickly recognized it as a lion.
Do you have any background in martial arts or wrestling or anything like that?
0.
Wow.
I feel like the only actual martial arts experience I have is I sometimes do the insanity workout tapes. Power jacks.
Are they paying you to say that? Are they paying you to say that?
You're welcome, Chauncey.
Hey, Travis, can you give some stats? How old are you? How tall are you? How much do you weigh?
I'm 31. I'm 5'10", and I weigh about 150, 155 pounds.
How many cats do you have?
1.
Okay.
Are you getting rid of it?
No. Yeah, so far, he's been a real sweetheart. I feel like he knows that something's up, so he's been extra nice to me and has kept his claws in the paws.
You came home smelling like a different cat.
No. I think one of the main reasons is, for the most part, I feel really fortunate that the situation turned out the way that it did. And I really feel like I made all the right decisions whenever I had to. So, and the decisions that I did make were pretty instinctual. It really wasn't like a super like thought-provoking moment where I had to come to a conclusion to make any sort of decision, I guess.
So you moved to Colorado to pursue this outdoor life.
Pardon?
I said you moved to Colorado to pursue a life in the outdoors.
Yes.
Did this change your mind?
No, not at all. It's definitely a very unique state that you can actually see wildlife. It's usually better at a distance, but I mean, I can't get over the number of hobbies that I've adopted since I moved here. And also consequently, like the amount of money that I spend on maintaining those hobbies. But it's just one of those things where I feel like this state has made me younger moving out here.
So are those areas safe to run in, looking back at what happened and given your experience? Are those areas and those trails safe for a runner?
I would say so, yeah. Just because I know several people who run up there all the time. I mean, just the statistical probability of it is so remote. It's just a really weird kind of anecdotal experience that I have where I'm like the one outlier. So I will go around those trails again. I will go with a buddy though.
What was it like to go back when with Colorado Parks and Wildlife officers and kind of retrace your route?
It was cathartic. It was a little creepy though at times. I remember when we got to the area where you kind of see some of that pine growth start and see the bed of pine needles on the ground. I'm like, well, yeah, this is, right in the area. So I was looking around, kind of taking in the scene, and then when we got to the point on the trail where Jason had kind of shown me where the fight had ensued because of the disturbed pine needles, I remember just looking back and wondering where that cat was framed in the trees. So yeah, it was good. I'm glad I did it, but it was definitely a little eerie.
What would you say that the runners? What would you say that the runners?
Sorry, exactly.
Other than running with a buddy now, are you going to consider maybe taking a knife with you or a stick or something for protection?
I would potentially consider a knife. But yeah.
Strength-wise, do you think because it was a smaller cat that you were pretty evenly matched?
Yes.
What would you say to other runners so that they're situationally aware when they're out on the trail?
Kind of like I just reiterated, or I said in the video. don't run with headphones in some of those really more remote areas, and yeah, just kind of keep all your senses open and take in whatever's happening, because you could easily have been in an area where there weren't pine needles on the ground, and it'd just be a flash of movement that could catch your eye, and then at that point, turning is really important so you don't get something on the back of the neck.
So what was the reaction of the doctors at the hospital when they saw you? Was it like, we've never seen anything like this before, or this is a 1 in a million, or what kind of reaction did you get from the docs?
Yeah, I remember asking them, the PA that stitched me up, I asked her if she had ever had a mountain lion attack before. She said, no, we had kind of like a weird fake bear attack last year, but never a mountain lion attack. And I was kind of surprised on that. And even when I checked in, because I got dropped off at the front door by Rachel, and I kind of walked through the metal detector, like, so what's your issue? And I said, well, I was attacked by a mountain lion. And then the lady just kind of was like, oh, you're serious? And so they admitted me to the back, and then they started giving me some really great care right off the bat.
Could you move a little closer to the microphone, please, Travis? Could you move a little closer?
What do you like about trail running? Are you still doing the dirty 30?
I like the remote aspect of trail running, and I like just the change in terrain. It mixes it up. I feel like running on flat roads can really get dull after a while, and I'm definitely still doing the dirty 30.
How's training going?
This week it got set back a little bit. I've been on a few runs since the incident, but nothing more than 10 miles. So I'm glad that I still have like pretty good range of motion in all my other body parts besides my wrist.
So your injuries haven't
on life at all?
A little bit, but really not too much. It's kind of it's weird having a potentially life-threatening scenario. I mean, it may not be necessarily my first. I've had a bad car wreck when I was younger, but this is the first one where it's a life-threatening situation where you have to kind of actively work your way out of it instead of just passively sit by and hope that things turn out.
So there's no physical therapy or anything else you have to go through?
I just have like a sheet of some exercises that I have to do for my hand, and I have to go in for another checkup. But yeah, nothing really too intense.
Have you been in any sort of like bar fights before?
I may have been in one fight when I was 4 years old with my cousin or something.
You realize you never have to buy him a beer in the street.
Yeah, that's right. We'll see. We'll see if people actually pay up.
Did you have any thought or interest in maybe mounting the animal on your wall as a trophy?
I don't have any interest in mounting it. I have hunted in the past, but it's always like ducks and pheasants, so just birds. I've never hunted an animal.
Did you clarify the timing as well? You said the whole thing took about 10 minutes, but how long do you think it took to actually suffocate the animal?
I would say 3 minutes or so.
And how long do you think it took you to run the 3 miles back? Fastest you've ever done?
Not the fastest, because on the way down, one of the crummier parts was that towers is still pretty icy in a lot of areas. So maybe about a mile in, I hit a good icy patch and started sliding, and I had to slow my roll a little bit and tell myself, don't break an ankle along with getting attacked by a mountain lion today.
And your thoughts one more time about running again, running the mountains, what are your thoughts?
Pardon?
Your thoughts one more time about returning and running in the mountains again, what are your final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely just I'm not deterred by running in the mountains again. I am probably gonna have a little cooling off period for a week or so. I'm actually gonna be going on vacation, so I'm excited about that. But once I get back, I will definitely be hitting up Glory State Park and Horsetooth Mountain Space soon. Get back on the trails and try to get some more training in so I can not completely fail the 30-30.
Where are you going for vacation?
Somewhere around the country.
Did you stay in touch with Rachel that took you to the hospital?
Yeah, I actually received a text message from them last night, giving me some more wishes. And when we get back from vacation, we're going to have to take them out to dinner and thank them.
Are any of them here at the present?
I don't think so.
Do you have any advice for if someone comes across a mountain lion, based on what you did?
Just kind of what CPW and a lot of agencies have iterated. Stand your ground Don't turn and run away. Make noise. Make yourself look big. And if necessary, fight it.
Any plans to write like a survival guide or maybe like a book or something telling your story?
It'd probably just be a pamphlet. It's not very long.
I know this is a life-threatening experience, but
Wrestling the cat, is that something that was like automatic, or did you just kind of realize that that's what you were gonna have to do to get away from?
So killing the cat, yeah. It really clicked after I hit it in the head with a rock, and it still didn't release my wrist. That at that point, more drastic measures were necessary.
what are your thoughts on the cat now? I mean, it is a life-threatening experience, but do you think about the cat?
I do. I mean, not in any sort of form of regret, but it's one of those just really unfortunate situations where we're both in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I have a question for Annie. How are you handling the increased attention from females?
So we already got marriage proposals.
Yeah, one of my coworkers, her first reaction when she found out that it was Travis was, "You gotta lock that down." But I mean, I guess I haven't. It's been something to kind of chuckle at, but I haven't had too big of a reaction to it. I guess there was one that said something about how he's not gonna have any trouble getting dates, and I just thought, nope, you won't. I'll be taking him on some dates. It'll be a thing.
Travis, do you have any sense of why the animal attacks you? I mean, we've heard that these types of animals don't generally attack if they have an escape route. Do you think that maybe it had nowhere to go, or thought it had nowhere to go?
I've learned quite a few things about mountain lions in the past couple weeks, and then one of which was that in this particular age range tends to be the most aggressive, and I think also for the fact that it wasn't an experienced hunter, it couldn't readily identify me as not prey. So it was definitely pursuing me as I was prey, but I think that's kind of why he's kept going.
Are you planning on doing any other press after this?
I haven't really fully considered it yet.
You mentioned some precautions you can take, and what I'm getting at is you said, run with a buddy, don't wear earbuds. I found that interesting. You said it in the video. Did you say it for us here?
Yeah. So I mean, really, one of the other added benefits of not running with earbuds in is during the summertime, whenever there's a bunch of mountain bikers, you don't get smashed by a mountain bike running behind you. So it's great to have some sort of awareness about you whenever you're actually out in the middle of nowhere.
As an environmental consultant, did that play into what happened with you at all? Did your experience, background, or training play into this?
I mean, not necessarily. I do work in a lot of remote areas, so there is a certain interaction with wildlife, but it's mostly rattlesnakes, and that's usually my primary fear when I'm actually running up around here too. But I guess in those in whatever trainings we have for working remotely, there's definitely some safety things that we go through, and so yeah, some of that could have been pretty beneficial in kind of staying calm and really like assessing your situation appropriately.
Have you gone back to work yet, and what have your colleagues and friends said about this?
I actually have not gone back to work. My company's been very supportive and really understanding, and I think they kind of just knew if I was out in the field and I encountered anybody, I'd just be bombarded with questions all the time. So they've been really nice and kind of have let me work from home and do some stuff that's a little bit more low key. It's been great.
What do you do for a living?
So I work for an environmental consulting company, and I do stormwater management projects for oil and gas construction sites, and then also the reclamation projects after the sites are done with construction phase.
And just for the record, Annie, could you say your name and how you spell it, please?
It's Travis Kauffman. It's TravisKauffman.
I'm looking for Annie to spell it for me.
Annie Bierbauer. My last name is spelled Bierbower.
Nick Clark just said he'd give you a free entry to the Quad Rock 25 on those same trails. Would you go back up there and race that, or not yet?
Potentially. I don't know I don't know when that race is.
May 11th, I think.
May 11th. Be a back-to-back grinder, but eventually. It's not out of the question.
Have you gotten any good nicknames from this?
I guess King of the North has heard that.
The Puma Pummeler?
That's a new one.
Did you tell your friends, like, after this happened? On Westridge, you could have went one of two ways, and you chose to come down Towers Road to Soderbergh Park.
Yep.
That's probably the shorter route than going back the other way, back to where your car was. Your car was at the trailer.
Yes.
So, and that's when you encountered help late April.
Right. Yeah, I figured my likelihood of running into somebody on Towers was
much
way
greater.
higher than actually going on
Westridge is
direct roads.
how many people make it up to Westridge?
Yeah.
Did you tell your friends immediately after this happened? Was it tough to kind of keep the story under wraps a little bit?
Yeah, a few of my close friends, they heard about it the next day just because they had sent me the article that an unknown jogger was attacked while running up at Horse Tooth. And I said, well, it's my buddy Sam and Brad. I said, well, that was actually me. And they freaked out.
Is it weird to have everyone kind of know about your story and everyone wanting to know who's behind that story?
Yeah, it is weird.
What's your favorite reaction that you've gotten?
I honestly haven't looked at too many of them, so I don't know.
What about your mom?
My mom she actually dealt with it better than I thought she would. I thought she'd be pretty freaked out, but she took it with a certain degree of calm that I had not fully expected. But yeah, I just kind of started off with, I have some weird news. I'm okay, but I was attacked by a mountain lion. At which point, it kind of took a while for the gears to turn, and she said, what? So she took it very well, and was just really glad that I came out as I have.
Is there an account of how much this cat weighed in comparison to your weight?
If I were to guess, I would say in the 50-pound range. I couldn't say for sure. I know that they had trouble actually getting an accurate weight because of the potentially cannibalistic behavior after the fact. So, yeah, I don't know.
Did the lion feel heavy on you when it was attacking, or was there a lot of movement?
Yeah, there's a lot of movement, and I didn't have any sense of weight at that point. I feel like I was just kind of electrified in other ways.
What was the first thing you thought when you realized the threat was over?
I was still very concerned about other cats in the area. So yeah, I got back on the trail, and I was just telling myself that I had to keep running, and kept my head on a swivel, looking around for any sign of movement, any break of the stick. It's kind of tough because that whole trail, that portion of it at least, there's a bunch of rock overhangs on the uphill side of it, and so the potential for ambush was kind of in the back of my mind. And my goal was to make it back to Towers, which is a much more open 4x4 dirt road that goes up. So once I made it there, I kind of gave out a little sigh of relief.
I assume you agreed with at the beginning of the news conference, which is that if this had been an older cat, a bigger cat, a more experienced hunter, that the outcome might have been quite different from what it was.
Yeah, I would say the outcome would have, that the cat would have come out on top. But also knowing what I've learned recently about cats, that's really highly atypical behavior for an adult. They tend to know way better what is prey and what is not prey.
Roughly how big was the animal? Can you just maybe describe it?
I would say it would probably be about yay long, and then probably a little bit shorter than the height of this table.
And you seem, reluctant to be in the spotlight. Did you ever give any thought to just not coming forward at all and just letting the legend live on?
Yeah, a little bit, but I also kind of heard that once an investigation comes to a close, that a name is open for release through Colorado Open Records Act. So at least at that point, I can tell my story kind of first and foremost and get out in front of it a little bit.
And you were taken to Poudre Valley Hospital, is that where you went?
Yeah. They did a great job. The stitches were top notch.
Travis, you said in the video that you focused on back legs because you were afraid of those back legs coming at you. Any experience with a cat and dealing with a cat, or
Just a house cat. That's about it.
Did it ever scratch you with its back leg? Or did you ever have to have that kind of experience with owning a cat? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think I've only been a cat dad for like 6 months now, something like that. Yeah, anytime I play with him, he gets on his back, he'll just kind of go crazy with those back legs and start scratching. And usually I have on my long sleeve sweater or something to help deflect those blows, but it's definitely a good thing to know in that situation.
Are you a dog person now?
Yeah, I'm always a dog person.
What's the cat's name?
Obi.
Obi. Okay.
So you thought it was gonna be like a 2.5 hour run when you went out for 12 miles? Is that right?
Yeah, I figured, I didn't know for sure. I tend to kind of improvise and see what the trail conditions present, because it's dicey up there. You don't really know what trails are going to be super icy or super muddy or what. So, and just kind of assess how I feel too at a certain point. I got up to the top and I felt good. So I probably could have done the 15 that day, but we got cut a little bit short.
Did you take traction or think about it or no?
No.
Were they in your truck at all, or just didn't take it?
I don't have any.
Okay. What shoes did you have on?
Asics GT 2000s.
So we have time for a couple more questions before we wrap this up. So if we want to at least get maybe one or two more on the table, and then we'll wrap this press conference up.
What have you learned about yourself?
Oh man, that's the toughest question of the day. I guess really that in kind of this really tough, scary situation, that if you kind of stay a little bit calm, which I luckily feel like I'm pretty okay at, if you stay pretty calm, hopefully you can use that to your advantage a little bit and get yourself out of a sticky situation.
Do you think you'll be more or less confident next time you go out into the outdoors?
A little bit less. Yeah, I mean, I've been out running, and I feel like I am a little bit more jittery than I had been, but I kind of really analyze all of the paw print tracks that I see now. Like, oh, do I see claws? Does it look like it's a rounded paw like a cat, or is it a dog? So I'm maybe not jittery, just more investigative.
How long were the claws?
I couldn't say for sure. Maybe this size of it's like first set of the digits. Couldn't tell though.
What did the cat's breath smell like?
I don't know. Whatever hand soap I use, I guess.
Was there a moment of disbelief that this was happening to you? Like, oh my God, it's a mountain lion coming at me.
Yeah, the whole.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, right when I turned and saw it, it was definitely disbelief, and then just kind of the shock of the situation, the fear, and then finally kind of the instinct to fight. So yeah, it was kind of that trajectory that those emotions followed. But yeah, I couldn't believe it when I turned. Like, no way.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much for your time. Travis, Annie, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.